What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, for you fellow Brawl esports enjoyers, we're going to be looking at LCQ, doing some predictions. So hopefully you guys on the event.brawlstars website can win some cool rewards. So make sure to stick towards the end so you get the full breakdown and get the highest chance to unlock all of the rewards. You can get some bling, coins, and an exclusive player icon. So make sure, again, stick towards the end. And also, I'll be streaming it over on Twitch, so make sure to check that out as well. Literally, I think like 9 or 10 hours the broadcast will land. And also, there'll be some games which you can't actually watch on the broadcast, which I'll be able to show on my stream, so make sure to check it out. But anyways, we're going to be running through all things LCQ. So if you're unaware what LCQ is, it's a last chance qualifier. So 16 teams right now have been flown out to Poland for an offline event, and then the 4 best teams will actually get a golden ticket to the World Finals in a month's time. So a lot is at stake here, and every single group for the day number 1, well, 4 teams are put into a group each, so 16 going down to 4, and it's a double elim system. So even if you lose your opening match, you go down to the loser bracket. Diving into group A, we have a group which is absolutely stacked with Chasmac Gaming EA, Reconic Esports South America, SK Gaming, and Team Flash. So the first game of the day is going to be Team Flash versus Reconic Esports SA. So Reconic Esports are a fairly decent team. I'd say they're definitely the weakest in their group, but they can definitely cause an upset. Second in South America West, and have been putting up some decent scrim results. So I'd say they're a pretty underrated team, but then they're facing off against Team Flash, which, again, you'd think a team from SEA wouldn't actually be the strongest, one of the weakest regions, I would say, out of all of them. But they actually have basically a Japanese roster, and they have Mameshi, who is a former world champion. They've got some amazing players on their roster as well. They're a very underrated team. So I think in the first game, it's pretty safe to go with Team Flash. I think they should be able to convincingly win that one. In my opinion, I think they'll just have the experience. And of course, having a former world champion on your team, it's just going to give you that edge. So then the second game is an absolute banger of a game. I keep going back and forth, not knowing who to actually say in my predictions, because SK, of course, is SK. They're insane on LAN. iChaos is one of the best players of all time. Yoshi, he's insane, and Ope, he just has that X factor. They've been looking really good in the scrims. They've been looking very hot towards the latter end of the EMEA season as well. They're looking like one of the best teams in the world right now, but they're facing off against Chasmac Gaming EA, who are just titans in themselves. They got Kenji, who was on Zeta 1 last year. He actually won MSI, the mid-season invitational, and actually came second in World Finals, so he's just insane. And then Kuru, of course, literally last year's world champion. Like, how can you just face off against these guys? And IC, who isn't like the biggest known name at the moment, but I've been watching their scrims, and he's a very, very strong player, especially on the Tara. So I don't know, this one can go back and forth. Before the video, I thought SK, but I think Chasmac Gaming might narrowly take this one. So I'm just going to go with Chasmac Gaming, but you could easily go with a 50-50 on that one. So then that takes you onto the winners match, which should be Team Flash versus Chasmac EA. So for me, I think Chasmac should be able to take this one. I won't really say convincingly, but thereabouts. Again, it's kind of like an East Asia matchup when it shouldn't be. So I think it'll just be close in that sense. And there's definitely been some close games between these guys in the past. I think Chasmac will actually narrowly take this one. So they should be able to book themselves into day 2 with 2 wins there. And then going into our elimination match, which should be SK Gaming versus Reconic Esports. So Reconic Esports, I think they won't have enough to take down SK Gaming, so it should be pretty plain and simple. SK should be able to win that one pretty comfortably. And then we go to the tiebreaker match. So this is going to be SK versus Team Flash, which this will be a very hot game. It just depends on how SK Gaming turn up, in my opinion. Like, Team Flash haven't had the best experiences throughout the year, just because there have been a lot of roster changes. They've not been able to practice against some of the best teams in the world, whilst SK, they're in a stacked region. They get the best practice a lot of the time. So for me personally, I think my EMEA bias will come in here, and I think SK will narrowly take it. So the 2 teams that should advance to day 2 are SK and Chasmac from Group A. So now moving on to Group B, which everyone is calling the Group of Death. This is by far the best group to watch, so make sure you're sticking around for these games if you're watching tomorrow, because they're going to be insane. I'm definitely going to cover it on the main channel as well, the best game out of Group B. But it's got Chasmac Gaming NA, who are second in one of the sub-regions in I think it's North America East, and they have a stacked roster. They only just missed out on World Finals, just behind Tribe Gaming. Then we have Clash, who are second in South America East, who they've been facing off against former Zest. I think they're now called Nouns, who are just really strong as well, so they've got to be pretty decent to even become second to them. We have STMN, of course. They're like the Titans of NA. They've been getting just ridiculous LAN results. They beat Crazy Raccoon at the ESL Masters event in Japan. They're looking very hot right now. And then VN Esporting, former ANR, who are actually really underrated team. I think they've definitely got a high ceiling. It's just whether they're actually comfortable on LAN. We didn't get to see them at ESL a couple of months ago because I think KC had to fill in for Nob, which is a little bit unfortunate. So hopefully we get to see the full roster this time out. So I've done explaining the teams. Let's jump into the first game. So Chasmac Gaming NA versus VN Esporting. So this one is set to be a pretty good match in my opinion. I feel like for both of these teams leading up, just seeing it on Twitter unfold. So I think there's been some issues with VN Esporting. I don't think they've been really scrimming with their full roster all of the time. I've seen OG fill in for like Nob a few times and stuff, so maybe their practice hasn't been the best. But then Chasmac Gaming NA, Toast, one of their best players, only literally arrived I think today in Poland, so their practice has been pretty scuffed, but their ceiling is insane. So I think just from what I've seen previously with Chasmac Gaming, they've been dominating their side of the region all year, just unfortunately missed out. So I think they should be able to take this one, even with my EU bias. I think Chasmac have got this one pretty comfortably, probably in the 2-0 fashion, if they can start off pretty hot. So the second match is STMN versus Clash. So one common theme in Brawl esports is that a lot of people underrate the South American teams, and you definitely cannot underrate Clash. I know it's STMN and they're super strong. I know I'm still going to go with an STMN win here, but you know, Clash, I think they've got potential in this group, could definitely cause an upset. So for me, STMN will take this one. It'll probably be a little bit closer than you imagine, but they should still be able to go into the winners match. And then now going into the winners match, so it's going to be an NA all affair, Chasmac Gaming NA versus STMN. So this one is set to be just insane. These guys are very good friends on the side of Chasmac and STMN, so if anything, it's kind of like a mini grudge match. You don't want to lose out to your friends. That's one thing that I never wanted to do when I used to compete. But I think, again, STMN just have the LAN experience. They've been putting out some really decent results, and I've been watching their scrims, and they're looking pretty solid. They've been grinding like crazy, and I just think Chasmac's preparation hasn't been the best. I think if their preparation was just like STMN's, I wouldn't be able to call it, but for now, I think STMN will be able to take this one and go to the day number 2. So now, going to the losers match, it should be VN Esporting versus Clash. So again, I think if VN Esporting had some better preparation, I'd actually be a little bit more biased and probably fancy them to go a bit further. But I just think Clash have been grinding a lot. Again, people underrate South America, but these Clash guys, they're like Tufa, for example, he's literally been around since the very first World Finals. So I think he's got it in him. They've just got something in them, the South Americans. I think they should be able to take VN Esporting down. It'll be a close one, but they should be able to win it. And then onto the tiebreaker match, which should be Chasmac NA versus Clash. So again, I think the ceiling on Chasmac is pretty high, and I don't know why. I just get this feeling that Clash are going to produce something like no one expects. So for me, I'm just going to go with a spicy take. I'm going to go with Clash taking the win versus Chasmac Gaming NA. I'm sorry. I love Fade and RBM and Toast and those guys, but I just think Clash have just got something in them online. People underrate them all the time. I think they'll be able to take it to day number 2. So those are going to be my predictions for Group B. Now moving on to Group number C, we have probably one of the weakest groups, I would say. Yeah, this is definitely the weakest group. No disrespect for the teams, but it's not as exciting. So we got Datos FA, we have Humble, Revenant Esports, and Rising Sun SEA. So there's definitely some potential, I would say, for some upsets maybe in this group. Maybe people are underrating some of these, but let's just jump into it. So first game we have Datos FA versus Humble. So of course I'm going to be a little bit biased here. I think people might underrate Datos a lot. I've been looking at their scrims, I've been watching a few of their games, and I think they look pretty decent, to be honest. I think their roster is pretty good. But again, I'm going to be biased, especially towards the UK boys with Cyclone and Tomsy from the UK, and Lukey's just goated on the stews. So I think they'll be able to take that one just in 2-1 fashion. It depends basically if they can get their nerves down, because of course the first ever LAN game, it can be pretty daunting, especially with just so much at stake. Well, it's not their first LAN game, but you get what I mean, the first one for BSC. So going into game number 2, we have Revenant versus Rising Sun. So these teams, I've got to be honest, I don't really have the most in the know about Rising Sun. I think they've looked decent towards the end of the season, I believe. I've watched a few of the monthly finals. They look pretty good. And of course, you've got CZK, who I know from the time playing with Coupe de Ace in previous teams. He's a pretty good player, so I know that about them. With Revenant, they've got some really strong players, of course. Response, he's been one of the best players in Brawl esports history, in my opinion. He used to be so strong a couple of years ago. I think he's kind of took a little bit of a back burner in Brawl esports, but I think he's still got the potential for sure. Sergeant, Trashen, and Prime, you know, these guys have been grinding. I think they're pretty underrated. I think they should be able to take this one pretty convincingly, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a 2-0 game. And then going into the winners final, so it would be Humble versus Revenant. So this one will be a very, very tough match. I don't know who to actually say who's going to come up on top of this. It's going to be 50-50, but again, I think I'm just going to go with my EU bias. I'm going to go with Humble. I think they've just had better practice throughout the year against some of the best teams inside in the world. I think they have the X factor as well with Lukey. I think they'll be able to go to day number 2. So going into the losers match, then we have Datos versus Rising Sun. And I just think there's just too much class for Datos. They're in a really underrated region in South America West. I think they've been looking good all year. I think they should be able to take Rising Sun down pretty convincingly. So sorry, Rising Sun, but I think it's going to be a pretty quick day for you guys. Going into the tiebreaker match, then we should have, I believe, Datos versus Revenant. So this is going to be a very, very good game. Again, people might not look at this one because it hasn't got all the stars on the roster, but I think this is going to be one of the best games of the day, in my opinion. I think it's very, very equal, but I believe in Response and Sergeant and those guys. I think they'll be able to take it in close fashion. I think they'll be able to confirm themselves to day number 2. I think Revenant are very underrated as well. They took I think they took a set against Tribe Gaming in the ESL Masters, and they look pretty good there, to be honest, with very little practice. Their practice were quite chalks because of visas and stuff, so I think they'll be able to take it to day number 2, and they could be definitely the underdog story throughout LCQ. Okay, so jumping into the 4th and final group, we have Group D, where there's teams Marcos Gaming, Na'Vi, Reject, and SK Kalas. I think this one is pretty clear. There's 2 very dominant teams, and then 2 pretty underrated teams / weak teams. So we have Marcos Gaming versus we have Na'Vi versus SK Kalas in the first game. So I think this one's pretty plain and simple for me. I think Na'Vi are going to be able to take it pretty easily, considering as well SK Kalas only got invited to LCQ because a team from China couldn't actually make it. So they're literally the 3rd best in one of the weakest regions. So I don't know. They look pretty decent in scrims. I've been watching them. They don't look the worst, but you know, Na'Vi are Na'Vi, and especially in this event, there's no hypercharged brawlers, so no Shelly and Spike. That basically means that tanks are going to be better, and everyone knows what Na'Vi can do with tanks. I was on the receiving end of it 2 years ago. I think they'll be able to take it quite convincingly. So next up, we have Rejects versus Marcos Gaming. So I think this one, I'm sorry for all you Marcos Gaming fans out there. I think they have 0 chance. I think Rejects will just sweep them so easily, like it's a Power League game. Again, no disrespect, but it's Rejects, right? They have a Charpe. They have so many amazing players. Levi as well, who's absolutely insane, who's, I think, is probably one of the best players in the world right now. He's looking insane. I just think they have too much for Marcos, unfortunately. And then we go on to the winners game, Na'Vi versus Rejects. So although Na'Vi have probably the biggest fan base, and again, you guys probably call me a Na'Vi hater for saying this, but I think Rejects should be able to comfortably take this. Na'Vi have not been looking good as of recent. They've definitely got the potential to cause an upset, but I just think by recent form, by watching the scrims as well, I just think Rejects just have the class. They look insane, being in a stacked region as well, going toe-to-toe with Crazy Raccoon. I think they should be able to comfortably take this one. But again, don't be surprised maybe with the off chance Na'Vi might be able to take it. Now, going into the losers match then, we have Marcos versus SK Kalas. So I think this one, I don't know what to actually expect. I don't really know too much about both teams, but I think just going off of regions and how those have kind of been performing in these kind of events, I think SK Kalas should be able to take this one. But maybe there could be an upset. I'm not too sure. I'm not really too inclined to care about that one, because then they've got to face off against Na'Vi. So we should have SK Kalas versus Na'Vi. Again, Na'Vi, I think they've just been in a stacked region the whole year. They were looking good towards the beginning of the year, but then kind of dropped off a little bit. I think we just have too much class for SK Kalas, especially considering Na'Vi finished like second in World Finals a few years ago. They've got the LAN experience. I think they should be able to take it pretty convincingly. So Rejects and Na'Vi should be able to advance pretty smoothly. So now jumping through the predictions on the event.brawlstars website, where you'll be able to see the countdown for day number 1 and also day number 2 if you want to see it in your localized time. So now let's go into the predictions. So we're going to be speed running through it because we've already gave you guys that breakdown. So straight away, I thought for Team Flash, I think they will just have too much in their roster and we'll be able to go through Raconic. The next one is a very tough game, honestly, like a 50-50, but I think Chazmac EA just look a little bit better. They've got the X factor about them, and then in the winners match, I think Chazmac EA should be able to go through them, and then of course SK versus Raconic should be able to just straight away win that one. And then this one again, a very tough matchup, but just because I think SK have had more practice in a better region, I think they would be able to take that one. So Chazmac versus VN, again a pretty even matchup, but I think Chazmac should be able to take that one as well. STMN versus Clash, definitely could be an upset, but STMN, they're STMN, you've got to go for them. And then winners match, I think again STMN are just so good on LAN, they should be able to take this one. And then Clash, I think are very underrated, especially on LAN. They should be able to just win this one. And again, my spicy hot take for LCQ this weekend is that Clash will beat Chazmac. I could be very wrong because Chazmac have been looking so good all year, but maybe they could cause an upset. Again, I can't just go for the favorite every single time. That would be boring. So next up we have Humble versus Datos. So I think again this one could be an upset. TD could actually beat Humble, but again I'm biased to EU. I think they'll be able to win that one. Revenant should be able to easily win that matchup. Again, a very close matchup, but my EU bias is just going to go with Humble. And then this one should be pretty easy. TD should be able to take this one. Revenant and TD is going to be a very close game, but I think I went with Revenant. That should be able to have enough class on the day. And then Group D's so easy. Na'Vi will win that one easily. Reject will win that one easily. You definitely get those two right. And then this one could be pretty close, but again, if you just vote Reject all the time, you're probably going to get some points easily. And then this one's a pretty close one, but SKC should have the class to go through that one. And then of course Na'Vi should be able to win that one. So some pretty easy games, I would say. A lot of these you should be able to claim to get some easy points with, but those are my predictions. I'll scroll through them pretty slowly for you guys. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one. As I said, I'm going to be doing a full breakdown of one of the best games in Group B probably tomorrow, so make sure you're checking that out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.